Hello YouTube. I hope you're having a great day today. Today what I want to do is I want to talk to you about a short story written by Guy de Maupassant. He's a writer who, just by saying his name, you're probably going to, if you're familiar with, traditional sort of English classes, literature classes, you might be familiar with him. You might have read some of his works sort of in these sort of shorts. His short stories in particular are masterful. He has somebody who sort of early perfected this sort of twist ending to stuff. It's incredibly good, incredibly well written, incredibly short. They're sort of these mood pieces, but everything from The Necklace to other works of his tend to be on the shorter side in order to get you in and get you to the ending and then get you out. And you may only spend like 20 or 30 minutes reading a Guy de Maupassant story, but it's going to really make you really sort of resonate with what he's writing and the feeling that he wants to get from you. Now, you might have seen his name, if you're English or American, you might have seen his name spelled Guy de Maupassant, and that's maybe how you even pronounce it. It's actually French. He's not American. It's Guy de Maupassant, and he is a French writer who's born in the 1850s, and he lived a very strong life. He had a lot of stories that he wrote, and I love him as a writer. I think he's very well done. And this is actually going to be the first review by somebody whose initial work wasn't actually written in English. As a general rule, one of the things I want to try to do is find these great sort of English stories that are out there for you, but this is a great story that we're about to sort of unpack, and it's probably one of my favorite horror short stories that's out there. So Guy, for the last few years of his life, as his mind started to go, he was committed to an asylum. And while he was at the asylum, he started writing horror stories instead of his normal short stories. They're sort of these quick little, vignettes with the traditional, de Maupassant twist ending, and they are incredibly good, incredibly well done. What is generally considered to be the best Guy de Maupassant story is the Horla, and that's what we're going to be looking at today. And I consider the Horla to be incredibly well done work. Incredibly well done. And so what we're going to do today is look at it. Now, I was first exposed to the Horla when I was a kid. This is a little collection that was collected by Watermill Classics, a small little publishing house that specialized in making like classic literature for children and such. And I was given this collection. It only has 5 short stories in it. One of those is by Charles Dickens, who of course you would know, called The Signalman. The next one is The Yellow Wallpaper by Charlotte Perkins Gilman, which is popularized and heavily canonized as a part of English literature. Another's by Edith Nesbit, The Cigar Case by Oliver Onions, and then the last one is The Horla by Guy de Maupassant. So only 5 stories in this collection. The Horla is by far the longest one in here. It's actually probably one of Guy's longest stories. Here it starts on page 96 and finishes about 137. So it's a little more than 40 pages, but this is, it's written in very big print for kids. It's not one of those little thicker things, so it won't take you probably too long to read. I went ahead and reread this before. This is probably the 3rd or 4th time I've read it before doing this video for you this morning, and after rereading it, it probably took me like 70 minutes to reread it. So one of the things that I really like about it, to start off with, is that it's written early. It's a, sort of this journal that is being kept by this person in France, and it's going to sort of unpack this person's descent into madness, like many horror stories will. It's an early version of that trope, so it's one of the more influential versions of that. As it happened, he's writing this in the 1800s, so this is well before that became a common sort of trope for horror writers and for writers of the weird to have this sort of journal that sort of catalog their fall into madness. But it's well done, and that's going to be kind of the framework for it. I don't want to give away too much. Again, I want to try to keep my reviews as spoiler-free as possible. But one of the things that's going to end up happening, he's going to encounter something that he's not sure if it exists or not, and slowly over time he's going to realize it probably does exist. And as he realizes that, his madness will begin to grow and grow and grow, with the realization as to what he's really sort of unpacking. And it actually reads in a very Lovecraftian. And one of the things I actually looked at was to say, did Lovecraft consider the Horla to be one of his sort of main influences? I wasn't sure. No, he didn't read it until afterwards, after he started writing his mythos stuff. But it does have this sort of mythos feel, this sort of descent into madness as I'm being exposed to things. And when you find out what that thing is, it's actually very Lovecraftian. So It definitely plays into sort of H.P. Lovecraft's wheelhouse. What it is, where it comes from, and why it has its powers are written off in a very Lovecraftian way, which is very, again, I was surprised. So I consider Guy de Maupassant's The Horla to be almost a little bit of an urtext of a Lovecraft story, without all the big names. I mean, he never mentions the, a Necronomicon or gives the creature a name or anything like that. So it lacks some of that sort of mythosian context, but it definitely feels like a Cthulhu mythos story or a Lovecraft story, written either before or outside of the mythos. And so it has a lot of that sort of feel to it. It's great. It does so in a very, very great way. One of the most compelling lines, and I think this is near the end of the story. It's about 10 pages before the end of the story and such. It's a quick little line, and it's a paragraph of its own. And at the beginning, there's this person thinking about how amazing, how awful the creature that he's realized is, and then he finishes with this next paragraph, which is just one line, but I want to read it to you because to me, this is the central line of the work. And it's also a central point of all this sort of cosmic horror sort of stuff that you're reading. So here it is. And I think, again, this is an incredible line. Remember, this is originally written in French and translated into English rather than being originally in English. So you got to, whenever you read a Maupassant work, you got to remember that the great language that you're reading has been translated from his actual. So he wrote stuff that resonated beyond French, which is incredibly important to understand him as a writer. So here it is, and here's the line: "We are so weak, so defenseless, so ignorant, so small. We who live on this particle of mud which revolves in a drop of water." We are so weak, so defenseless, so ignorant, so small. We who live on this particle of mud which revolves in a drop of water. Again, that is a just classic line that resonates for the sort of cosmic horror that Lovecraft and many others before, like Algernon Blackwood, or people that would write later on, try to tag into this sort of idea that we are so insignificant and so small and so minor, nobody cares about us, so you're not going to be able to get out of the situation that you've just been confronted with. It's a sort of concept, a central sort of concept is in a lot of these horror stories. And it's very good, and Maupassant does a great job with it here. And like any Maupassant story, it's very well written. He has a great understanding, command of language. And luckily I read French and speak French. I've read a couple of his short stories in French, in the original French, and they're just so good. He's such a great writer. If you think he's a good writer in English, and if you can read French, read them in his original language. They are just so good. He was such a talented writer. He really was. I have a lot of his stuff on my wall if you start to look at it, and the books that I have there. I think he's really great and a gifted writer. And the horror stuff that he writes when he's in the Asylum is incredibly well done too. But the Horla is considered the best of those works. I would agree. I actually consider it one of the best horror stories written during that era. So that's the Horla by Guy de Maupassant. If you have not read it, check it out. I'm going to give you a link to it in the below this video so that you can check it out and read it if you're interested in it. It's definitely worth your time. It's worth investing that, between an hour and 90 minutes based on your reading speed, because of how good he is as a writer and how just incredibly well done this story is. And how it's going to go in directions you're probably weren't expecting if you've heard horror story. He's going to go in directions, in very Lovecraftian directions, you're not going to expect him to do or see. And he does it very, very well. And his explanations for it, but definitely sort of fit in. So it's a great story. Again, it's considered one of his best works while he was in the Asylum writing those horror stories rather than his normal sort of short stories. So that's Guy de Maupassant's The Horla. Have you read it? Check it out and let me know what you thought about it in the comments below. Did you like it? Did you not like it? Did you think my personal opinion of it of us being this great work was over accentuated? Did you agree with it? If there were some specifics you want to talk about I didn't mention in the review, feel free to hit me up in the comments below. I'm happy to engage you with those. If you haven't read it, check it out. Again, you're not going to be wasting your time. I'll give you a link in the comments below and let me know what you thought of it. And if you've never heard of it, folks, this is Guy de Maupassant's Horla. If you've just only encountered Guy from hearing about him or reading maybe a couple of short stories from your high school or your junior high textbooks that you read here and there, and you thought they were particularly interesting and evocative with these great twists, you're going to enjoy this too. This is one of his horror stories, and he read a bunch of horror stories too. So he's also a horror writer too. So check him out; you're going to enjoy it. Anyway, hey, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it when you folks take time out to watch a video. If you're watching this right now, that means you watch the whole thing. So I really appreciate that you took some time out of your day. We all have such busy lives right now that the fact that you invested some time of your life into my video and this just makes me feel really good about that. If you really enjoyed this video, feel free to hit that subscribe button down there and click on that bad boy. I do have so many videos that are going to be showing up to follow it, that if you enjoyed this review of this horror story by this writer Guy de Maupassant, you're going to get lots more fantasy, science fiction, and horror that's going to be following. The goal of this channel is to unpack stories from those three genres that are great, that are classics that people may not have remembered or have heard about, and get them an opportunity to kind of live again. So thanks again for your time. You have a great day.